Welcome to our mini bootcamp, and in this bootcamp, it's going to expand over the next it's going to take like 4 days. We're going to go over HTML, CSS, and by the fourth day, we're going to put everything that we learned. The first day today is we're going to only go over the basics of HTML. We're going to try to cover as much as syntax or HTML elements that we can. In the next 2 days, we're going to cover CSS, and by the last day, we're gonna put everything that we learned in one project. So that's the plan for the next 4 days. Before we start, we're gonna give a little bit of introduction about Clarusway, who's Clarusway, and their impact on students, and why you should learn front end, why you should enroll in Clarusway courses, what it can offer you as support, as community for trainers, instructors, and other courses that also provided by Clarusway. So let me start sharing my screen. So Clarusway's slogan is that you secure your career. The first question, what is Clarusway? Clarusway, who we are. Here's an example that we're actually Clarusway that operates, as you can see, it's a global bootcamp where they have multiple training facilities. The main one is going to be in Washington, D.C. area. Over 1,000 students that currently enrolled in different 40 countries. They started in September 2019. Now there's over 200 people. You can find the reviews in Course Report, Career Karma, and SwitchUp. Oops, my bad. You gotta do your own research, and you're gonna find, you can search Clarusway anywhere in any of the reviews websites. You're gonna find that they're ranking better than other bootcamps. Clarusway is ranked as one of the best bootcamps of 2021 all the way to 2024. We're currently in 2024 by the leading organization in IT career training. And in 2024, we achieved 2 more badges. As you can see, this is all the badge that we received from different review websites, like here, Course Report, Career Karma, and so on. About the teaching model, when you go to a bootcamp, that the whole idea is the LMS. That's what's gonna tie everything together. So for example, when we go on a live session and you have the recording and you have the slides and you have the exercises, the LMS or the learning management system is the heart of any teaching model in any bootcamp. And I can tell you that the LMS that's in Clarusway, it put everything together and making the process of learning, especially the front end or back end, to be more seamless to you as a student. In LMS, you will have the opportunity to deepen your knowledge before and after each live classes. You will have access to all the recording. You will have access to all the resources that was provided for every single session. Here are like snippets of the LMS or Clarusway LMS, where you have everything organized. You can access the HTML material, you can access the CSS plus material. So you'll be focused on that specific category. Either you're going to be reviewing them for the first time, or you're going to learn about them for the first time, or you're coming back student for reviewing them. You'll find the course overview, the instructions. You'll also have the recorded videos, the homeworks, and everything in one place. Also, you will have the calendar of the upcoming classes. You will have workshops. You're going to do a lot of workshops with trainers that you will have actually engage in coding, one-on-one coding. You can bring your questions. Of course, also in live session, you can bring your questions. And that's what makes it different between a pre-recorded or asynchronous bootcamp and a live session. And I'm always pro with the live session because it's different than YouTube. You can watch something on YouTube, but then you can ask yourself how he did this or why he typed this line. There's no way that you can ask the instructor any questions. But when it's live session, you can't stop the instructor, ask him questions, and it's going to be interactive session. As I said, live sessions. There's two types of boot camps out there. Some of them are pre-recorded videos. You just get access to the videos. But the key to learn better or get your questions answered faster is by the live session, where you and the instructor get engaged in the same project. Mentoring. So the learning experience that you will have with Clarusway, that you need a robust mentoring system, and that's what Clarusway provides you. You're not going to be alone. You will have TAs and trainers with you either along the way, either homeworks, you have problem with your homeworks. As a matter of fact, it's the whole community. So the whole community push you to success, to succeed in your career path. Either your colleagues from other students, the instructor, mentors, the whole community. But mentoring, I would say it's 90% of your interaction is going to be the instructor and mentoring. You will have your TA answering any of your questions, workshops, job preps. We stand by you at every step of your education journey. Career Management System, or CMS. We post a formidable and seasoned CMS team going to be dedicated to preparing you for a job-seeking success. Mention the service in in the case here, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. One is going to be, you can have resume preparation. You're going to have a team looking at your resume, update your LinkedIn profile. You're going to have mock interviews. That's after you finish the course, or even by the end of the course. The whole goal that you try to land a good job. You will have a team that's working on your resume, working on your LinkedIn profile, and also do mock interviews with you. 2, it's going to be hiring process management. You're going to have technical interview and final offer interview. Also, help with the offer and negotiation management, background checks, onboarding management, new position coaching, alumni network and services. You're going to become of the Clarusway professional community, even after you landing a job. You will also, after you finish the course, you will have access to all the resources that you learn about, because it's one of the human nature that you forget. So even after you land a job, after, let's say, 6 months, after you finish the course, let's say we cover a certain topic, but later on you forget it, you still have access to the LMS, you still have access to all the resources, to the Slack, to the community, Clarusway. You still can post your questions, and you'll get your questions answered by our team. Of course, Clarusway offer multiple bootcamps, not only for web development, either or full stack development. They have the cybersecurity classes, bootcamps. They have AWS, like Amazon Web Hosting. There's multiple courses, but I'll be focusing mainly in going over the full stack course because it's 2-part course development. That's what I'm going to be going over in the next slides. First, what is the full stack development? Well, you probably know the answer for that question. It's full stack mean it's a stack of technology. That's why you're going to use multiple technologies. You stack them on top of each other. There are some technologies involve the front end. And when I say a front end, that's going to live inside your browser. Your browser is the environment that will be executing that type of technology. And also you have a backend. Backend, it's mainly the data. part where you have your databases, where you're going to store the data. You have your server that will serve the data. And also the hosting, because you're going to host the data as well. Of course, testing as well. That's part of your backend. It mainly dedicated for the data. But the front end is how you present this data. Let's say you have a data for an e-commerce application. So you have the products, you have the prices, you have the categories, but you have them as a raw data. You need a way to show the product image. You need a way to show the product price, some buttons for the user interaction. That's where the front end comes in, where you present your data in the front end or in the browser. As the front end technology, you have the HTML. The HTML, you can think about it as the skeleton or the semantic structure of your web page. I want a button right here. I want an image right here. So you defined these places, think about it as a placeholder for your data that you want to display inside a document. And I always tell the student that an HTML document is pretty similar to a Word document. There's nothing more. So Word document, you can write a very good Word document, have images, it's have titles, it's have paragraphs, the same idea with this HTML. If you learn about HTML, you can write any document that you want in a format that will make it view inside a browser. So that's for HTML. CSS is how you style it. We're talking about colors, fonts, anything that will make your web page look much better and appealing for the user. The JavaScript is actually where all the magic happen. That will make your web page more interactive. When a user click a button, you want to take him to a different page, or you want to add an item to the cart. That's happening through a programming language, which is the JavaScript. That's the core technology for any browser. But as your application getting bigger and bigger, and if you're building like an enterprise level application, to write a big application with these three main technologies, it's a little bit hard. You need frameworks. Frameworks help you to write your code more efficient and a much easier way. So one of the popular frameworks for the front end is going to be React. React is a framework that, in that case, help you write JavaScript and implements correct CSS. And instead of writing regular vanilla JavaScript, you can use the framework. It will make your life easy as a developer. And at the end of the day, it will compile or convert the React code to a regular JavaScript code because the browser can only understand JavaScript. TypeScript, you can think about it as superset of JavaScript, also need to be compiled to JavaScript. The only difference that you define types, because as you learn later on in your career, that JavaScript is a loose type. You can't define a number, you can't define a string, you can't change the variable names. TypeScript is similar to JavaScript, is basically JavaScript, but it's more strict. And it's strict will allow you as a developer to catch all these problems during the development or even before you start running your application. You will have Sass, Bootstrap. Sass and Bootstrap are for CSS frameworks. So, or Sass is actually pre-processing CSS. That means you allow you to write much complex styling with CSS. It's have other feature added to the regular CSS, and the Bootstrap is just classes that will make it easier for you to style a button, style an input field, a form, and so on. Redux is a state management library that can be used with React. Firebase is it's something called BAAS, or backend as a service. So let's say you are good in front end and you don't want to write a code for the backend. You can get the services of a backend as a service. You don't have to write any code by using Firebase. And so these services could be authentication, database hosting many of these features that you usually have in the backend. You can have it with the Firebase, and Firebase is a Google company. My favorite is Next. It's a React framework, so it's built on top of React, and it's provide you with the server rendering application. So technically, it will fix some issues that React usually have, like routing, uh, single page application, because React is a single page application. Single page application, probably they are not the best with SEO or search engine optimization, but Next as a framework for React solved that problem. And Next is recently came up, and this type of technology, even React just announced that they're going to use server components. As you can see, Clarusway is always looking for the newest and latest technology to put it in your skill set. And you will find that the course keep always updated with the latest version, either with HTML or CSS or React. We will always teach the latest version of these libraries and these type of technologies. For backend, you will learn multiple types of database: MongoDB, Postgres, SQL, and of course the regular SQL. These are different types of databases. As you can think about it as a framework for these databases. It's not actually a framework, it's an adapter, or to make your life easier as a developer, you have a SQLize, which is a package that help you interact with SQL and Postgres much easier with JavaScript. Also for Mongoose is, you can think about it as an adapter or a framework. It's technically called ORM for MongoDB. You will also learn about Node.js. Node.js is a JavaScript, but in that case, it's not going to be running in your browser. It's going to be running in the terminal. And there's a framework that's very popular that comes with Node.js. It's called Express. You will have Postman for testing APIs, Docker for deployment. So as you can see, there is a lot of technologies when it comes to front end. It's might be, if you try to do it in your own, it's very confusing. Which you should learn before which, and what exactly you need to learn about this type of technology. And that's the reason they call it a stack. So I'm building an application. I'm probably gonna pick a couple of these technologies for my front end and a couple of these technologies for my back end. Then I'm gonna stack all of them together. So I will have a full application, this application running in the front end and also running in the back end. As a modern stacks, you will hear this term like MERN stack or mean stack. MERN stack is, if you say MERN, the M is stand for Mongo. That's your database, because I need a database. E stand for Express, which is the framework for the server. R stand for React, and the N stand for Node.js. So if you have MERN, that's mean that you're going to be using React for your front end. As a backend stack, you will have Node and Express, and as a database, you're going to have the MongoDB. You also can hear the mean stack, or the company that you're going to working for, they're using the mean stack. Notice the difference between MERN and mean is just the R was replaced by A. The R and A in that case, instead of using the React as a framework for the front end, they're using Angular for the front end framework. But here in the US, mainly, we heavily rely on React, and React made by Facebook team. Angular is made by Google team. Okay, I'll take any questions. If anybody confused or know about these technologies, you can interrupt me. Or if you have a question, you can raise your hand. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Now let's talk about your career path modules. There is 3 main models. Okay, so you have 36 weeks, 12 weeks here is module 1, which is the front end web or front end web essential. That's going to be from February 26th all the way to May 24th. Okay, 2024, of course. It's high demand skills for a strong IT background. You will learn everything about how you can install the softwares, uh, JavaScript, and many of this like CSS and everything that you need before you jump into React. For module 2, it's going to be front end 2, which is the web development with React. And that's going to be heavily focusing only on React as a framework to building your application. That's going to be between June 3rd and August 23. It's capable of an entry-level IT position. So if you finish, for example, the first module, that's the type of job that you're probably going to look for after accomplishing this model. I would say finishing model 1, model 2, that puts you as a front-end developer. If you finish the 2 modules, you can start looking for a front-end developer. The next 12 weeks is going to be focused on the back end, where you're going to learn about databases and building servers. That's going to be from September 9 all the way to November 27, 2024. So as you can see, each of these 3 models is going to be 12-week long. This is highly skilled IT professional because you're going to know everything. You're going to know what's happening in the front end. You're going to know what's happening in the back end. As for the projects, you should focus on the project because at the end of the day, what's going to make you as a developer, you want to build your portfolio. You want to have a good GitHub repository where you push all your projects. You want to demonstrate the technology that you learned in your journey. You want to build a lot of applications, add them to your resume, put a couple of them in live projects. So when you submit for a job and you have all these links inside your resume and describing all the projects that you worked on, your employer, even before contacting you, he can take a look what project that you built. And now he know what type of technology that you're familiar with, and most likely that you're going to be hired since you already this type of technology aligning with the company that you're applying for technology, because that's what they're using day to day. So here's a complete list, as you can see, with the Clarusway bootcamp courses. It's more project focused, so it's more practical. It's not that we give you a lot of theory. No, we jump into code right away. And when you learn vanilla JavaScript, you'll have project to find a number, to do app, very simple to do app. And the complexity of this application is gonna, if you're a beginner, we're gonna make it simple application as you're gonna learn more, that this type of applications or projects is gonna be getting more complex. You're gonna do like to-do app, hangman, lottery game, iOS calculator, checkout page, product list page, countries app, weather app, that's where you fetch data from an external APIs. And you will also have other algorithm tasks. When you learn about CSS and HTML together with the JavaScript, you'll have a simple survey form. And also we're going to do a Netflix page, Google landing page. We're going to build a parallax website. So it's like going to give you parallax effects. We're going to create a Clarus website design or mockup for a Clarusway web page, checkout form, team member page, Bootstrap homepage. We're going to learn about SaaS technology, and we're going to have a project for it. So we're going to have a SaaS profile website. When you learn about React.js, we're going to build an image gallery, tour places, language card, random user, task tracker, recipe app, movie app like Netflix. So it's going to be something like Netflix where you can search movies, learn about the movie information, and you can play the movie. Item stock app, blog API where you can create a post, delete a post, and read other user posts. For the backend module or Node.js Express, we're going to build a lot of RESTful APIs, and also we're going to build a couple of server running application. So we're going to build a simple CRUD operation application, to-do application, pizza app, where we're going to provide the data for pizza menu, flight application, quiz application, stock application, where you can manage your stock, the purchases and sales that you made in your stock. And finally, we're going to do like a blog post apps as well, but that's from a backend perspective, not the front end perspective. So we care more about the data, not how to represent the data. A typical week schedule, so it's going to be busy week for you, especially. So as you can see, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. in a daily basis, that's going to be self-study plus a mentor supervised, where you have the mentor with you, can answer any of your questions. From 8 to 11, it's going to be online live classes. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There is no Saturday or Sunday classes. That's where you can have a free day for you. So the live sessions are scheduled from Monday to Friday, spanning from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Additionally, before the class, Clarusway provides self-study slots where a mentor will guide you through exercises or any pre-class work and collaborate with your team members in team projects. Which IT role will you apply for after your graduation of these three models? Learn about your options. Again, the target job titles that you will go, for example, Indeed, look for this type of jobs. You'll look for a front-end developer. You already have all the skills for front-end. And you can, as a title, you can put front-end developer or front-end engineer. Pretty much both are the same job descriptions. You can put a back-end developer where after you finish Model 3, especially because you learn more about Node.js and Express. Web developer, that's more like a general web developer. Full stack developer, that's the front end and the back end. React developer, that's more specific focused, that you're going to be working with React applications. Express developer, JavaScript developer, and Node.js developer. So these are the targeted job title when you do the job search. That's what you're looking for. Now let's answer a good question. How much does a full stack developer make? Just 1 second. Sorry for that. Based on the Glassdoor salaries, if you search for a full stack developer, how much they make, it will give you like between 72K and 120K. And I can tell you it's more than that. That's probably the search a couple of years behind. But now the economy changed. I can tell you that it's way more than that. With an average right now, I would say 75. I have multiple students. They started with 80K. So as you can see, that's why it's a very hot job market, and it's always in demand for good developers. It's based on your skills, what exactly you learn. Most of the companies, they need developers that they're familiar with the up-to-date technologies. As I said, with Clarusway, we heavily update our curriculum to reflect the newest and the latest technology. That's the whole key here. So now we'll take any questions about like the courses that provided by Clarusway, either front end or the back end. Take questions, suggestions. feedbacks. Okay. So now we can start with the HTML part where we're going to cover HTML today. Just 1 second. Let me pull up the slides. So we're going to start with the HTML. And as I said, this is the very first step if you want to learn about web development. Yes, it should. Should have access through the slides from the LMS. Okay, let's talk about HTML. This is the very first step to learn about web development, as I said. And very good understanding of HTML. You shouldn't skip that step. I know that a lot of students try to jump in for JavaScript as soon as possible. They don't spend enough time in HTML, but I highly recommend to fully understand how the structure of the web work, because that's what is HTML. So basics of HTML. HTML is a markup language. It's not a programming language. So technically, a markup language, you can say that I want a paragraph here, and I want an image here, and then I want a title here. You organize your web page. Think about it as a placeholder. This is for a title, paragraph, image. You put them together. That's why it's called a markup, because you want to mark up your document with all these elements. Okay. My drawings. Let me actually download it so I can make it like a full screen. It's going to be much better. Yeah, let me open it with PowerPoint. And in that case, I'm going to have a full screen in that case. So again, HTML is an evolving markup language, and it has been evolved from a various updates. You started from HTML1 all the way, now we're at HTML5. So there's always changes. You can think about it as it's have standard and specification of the elements and the tags that we going to be using. Each version has allowed its user to create a web page in a much easier and a prettier way and make sites very efficient. So we're going to learn about the basics of HTML. First, we need to understand what is an HTML, the history of HTML, the structure of a very basic web document, and we're going to build a simple web document. Does anybody know what does an HTML stand for? You can put it in the chat. It stands for, the H means hyper, text, markup language. So the hyper here, because when the web development started in the, I would say, the 80s and the 90s, you have something like hyperlinks. It's a text because technically you're building documents, and it's a markup because you're adding placeholder for elements, and it's a language. Technically, there is a debate, should be called a language or not, because it don't have like conditional statements, it don't have loops, it's just markup language. But again, that's what HTML stands for. What is an HTML? So HTML is the code that is used to structure a web page and its content. So HTML, or Hypertext Markup Language, is the code that is used to structure a web page and the content of this web page. HTML is a markup language used to create documents on the web. It describes the structure and the layout of the web page. So the structure, what is this page included, and what comes before what. So that's what comes before what, or that's called the layout, how you can lay out your page. A hypertext is a text displayed on a computer or a device that provide access to other text through links, which is the hyperlinks. Like you have a link, you click on it, you go to somewhere else. That's what is a hyperlink. And here's an example. You click on the HTTPS, then you go to www. Let's say Clarusway.com. It will take you to the Clarusway document that is hosted in the web somewhere. And this document was structured by HTML language. So hyperlink takes you to a new page. Okay. And here, for example, you say, I want the title of the page. Here's an image. Here's like a title of my document. I have a couple of paragraphs and probably have a list here. You describe the document through the HTML language. As I just mentioned, that the HTML only provide the structure for your document. Think about it as the skeleton. To make your document prettier, or you add colors and you can add fonts, you can use the CSS. And CSS, it's another language that will help you with the presentation of your document and the appearance of your document. JavaScript, it's actually will add action and make your web page dynamic. And it's also allow it to be user-friendly and user interactive web page. So this is the main three technologies you need that your browser will be executed: the structure, the styling, and the JavaScript for the interactive with the users. Now let's go over the history of HTML. I already gave you the answer for that. Can anybody said, what is the latest version of HTML? You can put it in the chat. Somehow I told you, like, what is the latest version? Exactly, Jan. That's correct. It's 5. So it started back in 1993, where the very first version, it's a standard. You can think about it as a standard because everybody was trying to build a web page, but there was no standard. You need to put a standard together. That was back in 1993. So information could be read and accessed via the browser. So the purpose was just to share information. Fast forward to 1995, another version came out and they added another features to the very first version, which is 1.0, and they introduced the HTML 2.0. Back in 1997, Dave Ragetti introduced a fresh draft on HTML, which improved new feature of HTML and gave more powerful characteristics for webmaster in designing websites. That was 3.2. In 1999, you will have the HTML version 4.01. They added more elements and tags, and all the way to 2014. And you see here the HTML5. is extended version of version 4.0.1. And they added a lot in HTML5. They added multiple APIs that you can use with the browser. Semantically, they added article, they added stuff that we're going to talk about later in today's class. So our course or today slides is mainly focused on HTML5. They added the video, the audio to the web pages elements. Previously, they used divs. You will have a link here where you're going to learn more about the HTML history and was precisely what is the feature of every single version. And you can do your own comparison and see what is the feature was added, for example, version 2 from its previous version 1 and so on. This was the very first HTML page. As you can see, it's very basic. It have a couple of text and it have a couple of links. So when you click in the link, it will take you somewhere else. Okay. What are you going to need to write an HTML code? You're going to need a browser, which I'm assuming that all of you probably have a browser. I prefer to use Chrome. Firefox is not bad, it's good. You have Safari, you have an Opera. Highly recommend don't use Internet Explorer because it's have to do with the engine. I'm not saying it's bad, but most of the modern web application, they also have, they prefer to use the Chrome. For a text editor, you can use a regular Notepad. Nothing wrong with that because your browser, your code don't need to be compiled. It's not like a C++ language where you write your code, then you compile it to make an executable file. In that case, we don't have any executable files. Our text, I will run it within the browser. However, if you write the regular Notepad, your job is going to be really hard. You need some tools for you as a developer. So you will see that some editors that will help you, like Notepad++, Sublime Text, CodePen, which is an online code editor. By far, Visual Studio Code, which is owned by Microsoft, is one of the best tools. Highly recommend to install Visual Studio Code, and that's what I'm going to be using in the next 3 days as well. You have also Atom. It's good. So let me walk you through the installation process. Does anybody have Visual Studio Code installed on his computer? You can. Perfect. We have Tori, have it. Who else have it? Okay, see now you have it. Perfect. Good. Again, the process of installing Visual Studio Code is very simple. You type VS Code. Make sure it's Visual Studio Code. Don't install Visual Studio. It's a completely different software. It have Visual Studio Code. You click on it. It automatically will detect what operating system you are in. If you're a Mac, it will give you the download for Mac. Right now, it will detect that I'm in Windows, and you can install the executable download, and it will give you the downloader here. You click on it. Just want to show you one step. Even if you didn't do the step, you can always go back and install it again on top of the current version that you have. Make sure that you check all of the spines. And what I care about is add open code with code action to Window Explorer directly context menu. What is this is that I can go create any folder. Let me call it HTML. And it will add to the right-click menu. You will have the shortcut to open this folder with Visual Studio Code. Okay. That's what I create because that's how I'm going to open folder with Visual Studio Code. Right, right click, show more, and you will have open with code. And you will only have that option is during the installation, you check this mark. Previously, if you installed for a long time, they didn't have this checkboxes checked like now, and you will have it like unchecked like this. And you manually have to go and check them. And I previously have some couple students like, oh, I can't see when I do right click to open it with Visual Studio Code as in the case that I have right here. So you, even if you don't have that option, you can reinstall it, which automatically now they will have all the check boxes here. Now I can exit that. The way that you use Visual Studio Code, you open directories, you don't open files. It's very important. You open a workplace. So I created an empty folder. So right here, open it with Visual Studio Code. And I open it with Visual Studio Code here. Right away, you will have the welcome page where you can close it right here. You will have the toolbar here, like the file system or the file, the edit, selection, and so on. This is our folder here. And notice that you have multiple tabs from the side. You probably don't have all what I have right here, but that's fine. You should have the Explorer, the search, and the run and the debug. At least you should have these 3 tabs. And also the extensions. Okay. You can create files by clicking on this icon. So I can create a new file here, let's say index.html. And it's very important to add the extension for your files because that's how Visual Studio Code will help you. Now it's understand that this is an HTML file and it help you to write it good. And if there's any error in the code, it will notify you. If you're writing a JavaScript file, you put JS as extension. And in that case, it will help you with the syntax of the programming language. Okay. If you want to create a folder, you have to click in this icon. Let's say I will create a main folder. Okay. You're probably not going to have the same icons that I have because I'm using an extension for that. But the extension that I'm using is called Material. You can search for it. Icon. That will provide all the icons for the files and directory just to make it easy for you to know what file you're dealing with. Here, it will have the HTML icon at the top. So you can install that extension. Okay. So you have the extensions. You can get back to the Explorer and you will have your HTML page. Another extension that we were going to use, which is the live server. So this is the 2 extensions that we're going to use. The live server. So when we write a code, we can open it in the browser right away. And whenever we make changes to the code, it will reflect to the live server right away. So that's mainly for now the 2 extensions that I'm going to use with the Visual Studio Code. Okay. Any question about the installation or anybody have a trouble with installing Visual Studio Code or getting the extensions? Okay. So we can take our very first break. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to get back exactly at 8 p.m. And once we get back, we're going to start writing some codes. We'll see you in a little bit. Hey guys, welcome back. Let me start by sharing my screen. So before the break, we went over the installation of Visual Studio Code. And here we have a document. We created a document, very simple document. We give it a name and an extension that we're going to build an HTML document. Now we're going to talk about the HTML page structure. And this is not only with HTML documents, this is with everything. Like later on, we're going to learn about requests and responses. Everything have a head and a body. So you can think about it, either an HTML document, it will have a head and body. That's the basic structure. So the basic structure of HTML consists of 4 elements. The first one, it's a little bit weird to type it. It's just doc type with an exclamation mark in the beginning. The casing is not important here. You can put it all in lowercase, it's fine. But as a convention between developers, they put it all in uppercase. It's called doc type. That's where you define the type of your document. Okay. You have an HTML tag, and notice that these are tags because they start with the opening and closing of the angle bracket. You have the head tag and the body. So the HTML will mark the beginning of your document, and your document should include a head and a body. So you have the head and the body. Usually the head, you will have metadata. Metadata means data that you send only to the browser that the users will not gonna see. It's just instructions to the browser. And anything that you want the user to see is gonna be inside the body. So when you put something in the head, that is meant to the browser. But when you put it inside the body, that's meant for the user to see it. And I want you to notice that HTML mainly 90%, I would say 90% comes in pairs. You see the head, you type it twice, the body, you have it twice, and you have the HTML, you have it twice here. The first one was the opening and closing tag. That's called the opening tag. That's the opening. And everything is nested inside it. When you close your document, because the HTML marked the opening of your document, you have a closing tag, which as you can see, it's pretty similar to the opening tag, with one difference that you have an extra / here before the name. Okay. So you have the head, you should have here a /. You have the body, you close the body. You open the body, you close the body. You open the head, you close the head. You open the HTML tag, you close the HTML tag. 90% of the elements, they come in 2 pairs. Not all of them, and we're going to learn about self-closing element in a little bit. So now let's talk about these 4 elements. The doc type don't have any closing tag. So the doc type indicate the standard compliance or a version of the document. As we said, HTML have 5 different versions. So you have to tell the browser which type of HTML that you're writing your code in. So that's the first tag. Let's type it together and use it together. So I'll have my Visual Studio Code, and you'll see that the Visual Studio Code, that's the reason you want to use an editor, because it gives you this IntelliSense and auto-completion, tell you, are you trying to type in doc type? Yes. Here, this is the element name. Whatever you see here, HTML, is something called attributes that we're going to learn, which is an extra information that we provide within the tag. And right here, I'm telling the browser that this document will be written in HTML5. But you might say, why you didn't type in 5 here? No need, because if you type in just HTML, now the browser understands that the syntax that you're using is for HTML5. Now the question is, how can I tell the browser that I'm going to be typing in HTML3 or in HTML1? Well, you can open Chrome and you can search, for example, doc type for HTML3. And you can open the W3 School, which is a reference web page. You will notice here that the H4.01, this is the attribute that you have to put, which is a long string. That will identify to the browser that you're using HTML 4.01. If you're using XHTML, which is a more strict version of HTML, you have to specify that in the doc type. For simplicity, for HTML5, they just put it as an HTML. As I mentioned to you, it's not case sensitive. So you can put it in lowercase, the casing doesn't matter. But as a convention, you should put doc type in uppercase, okay? So that's the very first element. And it's simply, we'll give instructions to the browser. You're telling the browser, hey, I'm using HTML5 in my document. Let's open. Next element, the HTML element, act as the root of the document. That will mark the beginning of the document and the end of your document. Okay, so let's, and this is, we'll have an opening tag and closing tag. So you put the angle bracket and type in HTML, and notice that the Visual Studio Code will automatically close it for you. It will provide a forward closing tag, and notice that the closing tag will have /. Okay, and I like to put it in a new line like this, because that's where you're gonna, whatever you type between the opening and the closing, it's gonna be your HTML document. You add your code between the opening tag and the closing tag. So here we go, the HTML, and you can put something like an H1. H1 is like heading, or heading level 1, and we're going to talk about heading level 1, paragraphs, and all of that. But this is simply title. So the browser, when it sees H1, it will view it as bold text, and the font size will be bigger. Next is the head element. So you will divide your document to two parts, the head and the body. The head element contains document metadata. Metadata is data about the data. That's what metadata is. So it's instructions to the browser itself. The head contains the title, and this is very important for SEO, and I will explain why the title is very important for SEO or search engine optimization. And search engine optimization is that will make your web page rank higher than other web pages in search engines. Okay, it's very important to have a title for your document, and I'll explain why. Also, the body element contains the content that will be displayed for the user. So your HTML document consists of two elements, the head and the body. So let's do that. Right here inside my HTML document, I will have a head, and you need to close it, opening tag, and closing tag. And I see a lot of students that they forget to put the /. Please, the syntax is very important when it comes to any programming language, not only HTML. So it's very important to add the / here. Also, you need a body for your document here. You put all the instructions to the browser right here, and anything that will be viewed to the document will be inside the body. So I can open the body, and let's put something in, like a paragraph. With a paragraph, using the P tag, which is short for paragraph. And I can say, hello, HTML. For the heading or a title of my page, I can use H1. And again, the all not case sensitive, you can use uppercase, but it's highly recommended to use lower cases for the tag's name. So I can say my website. Okay. Now notice I didn't add anything to the head. I will add something in a little bit. But within the body, that's what is the content of the documents that the user will see. He will see a title that is called my website, and he will see a paragraph that will display the text hello HTML. Now, how can I run this with you? There's multiple ways that you can run it. You can open the folder like this. Let's put it side by side. And you can double click on the index.html file that we created. And you will have automatically the preview right here. And here is our web page. Notice that the heading will be bold, and also it will, the font is bigger than the paragraph. Okay, that's the default styling of your browser. Okay, so this is the heading and this is the paragraph. Notice this tab right here. This is not part of your document. This is your document here. This is what is the user see. But this is called the title of your document. And this is instructions that you send to the browser itself. Notice that we didn't send that instructions. So by default, the browser will use the file name. Okay. So now I want to change this title that will show in the browser tab to something else. You can do that since it's instructions that you will send to the browser. It's not part of the document because your document is here. What does the user see? I need to add it to the head. So you add the title. And in that case, I can change the title to my or best website ever, something like that. Notice once you change it, it's not going to be reflected right here. I need to refresh my page to read the file again. Notice once I refresh my page, you'll have the title here, best website ever. And also, let's say I add here, make an exclamation mark. If I save, notice that your document is not saved when you have this white circle. If you press Control S, that will save the file, but it's not going to be automatically reflected in your document. You have to refresh the document, which is quite annoying. And that's the reason you need tools like the live server. So if you want to run this with the live server to be more productive with your development, you right click on the HTML file and you will have this option open with the live server if you installed the live server extension. Open with live server and it's automatically will open your page right here. Okay. And now if I make any changes, if I remove the exclamation mark and I save it, it will automatically, I don't need to refresh my page, will be reflected in the purview right here. I can say, welcome, hello, HTML5, save the file, and it's automatically get reflected right here. Okay, so that's one of the benefits why you probably want to use the live server over just running the file from the folder that you stored it in. Okay, let me close this, close this, close this. Close this as well. So that's the very basic structure. You should have the doc type. your web page automatically, if you ignore the doc type, it will run normally because by default, the browser will assume that you're using HTML file. So if I didn't add that, not a big deal. I can open it and it should run normally. Nothing wrong will happen. Now let's answer the question why the title is very important for the SEO. If you go and you search anything in Google, let's say doctor around me, something like that. Not now. Let's see here. Doctor. Let's see, for example, from Merriam-Webster, which is a dictionary. Notice that what you see here, this is the link that you click on it. Find a doctor, New York State physician profile. What you click on it here, that's actually the title. Okay, so the more the descriptive, the title that you have for your document, the more when the user search for it, it will match exactly the search and it will describe what is the user going to see when he click in this link. So if you open this page, which is say here, doctor definition and meaning, notice that the title here, doctor definitions and meaning, same as what you see in the web search. So that's the title of this document. Find a doctor, that will be the title of this document. That's the title of this document. So I can click here, New York State physician profile. So the title here, it's very important because that's what is the user going to see when he search for your web page. Okay. That's why the head contain document metadata. The head contain the title, and it's very important for search engine optimization. Let's take a look at a simple HTML document. There you go. You will have the title here, my first HTML page. You'll have my first HTML page. You have a div. A div is a division. It's a generic name that you can take a piece of your page and you wrap it up within a div. So div is short for a division. UL is short for unordered list. So you're going to start making a list and it's unordered. Unordered means you will see by default bullet points right here. And within this bullet points, you make in the list, you have li element, which is a list item. So you can list items. Okay. Again, we're going to go over UL list items and all this tags. This is probably like new tags for you or like the UL or unordered list or order list. But this is the description. Notice that the HTML, you describe the document, then you get rendered the document. The UL will get rendered as bullet points. Each list item will be on its own line. Creating a Hello World HTML file on Visual Studio Code. You just open the Visual Studio Code. And let's say this is your first code here. You should have the doc type HTML, indicating that this is HTML5. This is your document. And notice that everything is nested within the HTML. You can nest an element within each other in HTML. That's the whole concept. Within the head, we add the title. The title will have the opening and the closing tags. You have the body. You can add the paragraph directly, or you can wrap it up between div. Now let's go over what is the difference between elements and tags. Should I refer that head element or a head tag? Is it this is a title element or a title tag? Well, it depends what you're referring to. So we're going to talk about HTML element, how we can nest HTML elements in tags. So this is the opening tag. So this is a tag. Each tag starts with an angle bracket, opening angle bracket, or less than or greater than bracket in another angle bracket. This is opening tag. Okay. You can have a paragraph, you can have a head, body, whatever you put inside here. Then you have some content, like a paragraph, you pass some text here. This is the content. Then you close it with a closing tag. And the main difference between opening tag and closing tag is the forward slash before the name of the element. This is the whole thing was starting from the opening tag, including the content, including the closing tag. You refer to it as an element. Okay. And in that case, this is a P element or a paragraph element because you're using the P here within the opening tag and closing tag. It's very important that understand that you can use attributes, but you only use attributes in the opening tag. Don't add them in the closing tag. Attributes are extra piece of information that you provide for that specific element. For example, here we're using a class attribute, and attributes, they come with a key and a value, or a name and a value, and you separate them with an equal sign. The value should be wrapped up with double or single quotation. That's the syntax. For example, of an attribute, this is my document here, the HTML. And let's get back to doc type. I want to tell the browser that in this HTML document, I want to use an English language. So you can use the lang attribute, and that's the name. And then you can use English, or you can use Visual Studio Code EN US, like English US. Notice that this is the value, and the value is wrapped with double quotation. And this is the name of the attribute that I'm using. And they are separated by an equal sign. Now I'm telling the browser, hey, the language that I'm going to use in this web page is going to be in English language. And you can search the other languages syntax, for example, HTML lang attribute. And if you go to W3 School, the lang could be French. Now you're telling the browser that your website is going to be in French, and you have language code. Okay. Language code reference. You can click here. And you have all the languages that you can use. For example, English, probably past English. English, it's just EN, not US. Okay. You can, for example, I highly don't recommend that because that should be the job of CSS. You can do color, red. If you open it, no, it's not going to change the color. It's probably deprecated. BG color. Let's try BG color. Let me reopen it again. Oh, so the colors is not going to work. You can add a class or ID, or you can add a title attribute. Notice that this is a title attribute, not a title element. And I can add here my title. The value is between quotation. This is the name of the attribute. And title attribute, you can use it with any element. There are some general attributes that you can use with all the elements. One of them is the title. And the title is simply when you hover over it with the mouse, it will give you this this box with the title, with whatever the value added here, my title. See this box here? That's what is the title attribute will do for you. I can add it to the paragraph. Title, paragraph. So I hover over the paragraph, you'll see this box with the paragraph text inside it. So this is an attribute, the lang attribute. Also is important, we're going to use it. And whenever you add the attribute, it's very important to add it to the opening tag. Don't add it to the closing tag. It's not going to take an effect. Don't do it this way, for example, paragraph. If you save and if you open it with Visual Studio Code, and if I hover over it, nothing can happen because I added the attribute to the closing tag, and that's shouldn't be the case. You should only add it to the opening tag. Okay, so that's what is the whole element. The whole thing is an element. This is tag, opening tag, closing tag, and between the opening and the closing, you should have the content. Okay. So what is the content of the HTML in that case? The whole thing is the content here, right? Because that's what's inside the HTML. The content of the head is another element, which is the title. The content of the title is this text. So HTML can take content to be other HTML elements inside it because they can be nested. Nested HTML, you can refer to nested element as parent elements as a child. Think about it as a tree. So the head and the body, both of them are nested inside the HTML. So in that case, the HTML is the parent of the head and it's the parent of the body. Body and head are the child for the HTML tag, the HTML element, since both of them are nested inside it. You can think about the title is the child for the head. And in that case, the head is the parent for the title, and the HTML is the grandparent of the title, right? The paragraph is the child for the body, or you can refer to it as the body is the parent of the paragraph. So you can refer it from the paragraph to its parent or from the parent to its child. It's just some terms that you should be familiar with, like parent element, child element, grandparent element, and so on, since these are considered to be sibling elements, the head and the body. Since they are on the same level, both of them are childs for the HTML. Let's talk about the tags. HTML commands are called tags. Tags are written between the greater than and less than signs. Tag have a start and end with exceptions. What I would say is exceptions because there's some elements that will not going to have a closing tag. This is the opening tag for a paragraph in that case. You have the less angle bracket, then a character for the paragraph, indicating that this is a paragraph tag. Then we're going to have the right angle bracket, which is the greater than bracket. The closing tag is pretty much the same, except the forward slash. And when we say that tags have a start and end, that's the starting tag and end tag, with exceptions, because there are some elements when don't require a closing tag. And when I say some elements, that the elements that they don't have content, notice that between the opening and the closing, you have content here. But there is some HTML element that they don't have any content. So there is no reason for the closing tag, right? End tags are indicated with the / sign. Here are basic HTML tags that you might use. You have the HTML, which is declare the web page to be written in HTML. That's the beginning and the end of your web page. You can have the head, which is delimit the page head or define the page head, where you can add instructions to the browser. Title, define the title. Not going to be displayed in the page. It's going to be part of your browser. It's going to be the title of your document. Then you have the body, which is define the page body, and that's the visible part for the user. You add your code within the body. Then you have H, N. These are called heading levels. And you have 6 levels with HTML. That's the reason you have the value N. So N can be 1 all the way to 6. Let's take a look at them. And by the way, to create comments in HTML, you put the less than, the exclamation mark, dash dash, and then dash dash and greater than sign, and you can add any comment here, and it will be ignored by the browser. I can say this comment will not be visible by browser. And if I run it, you're not going to see it in the browser. So why would I need comments? Think about comments. They are very useful to add notes for yourself. So you can make some notes on the code. But this syntax is a little bit weird, though. Every time I have to write it this way, it's not the best. The cool part that with Visual Studio Code, we have some shortcuts that can help you create comments fast. For example, I can, if I press Control and /, that's one of the Visual Studio Code shortcuts, automatically it will provide me with the syntax of a form and I'm for a comment, and I can start typing my comment here, like heading or heading elements. If I press Control / again, you remove the comment. So it's like toggling the comments, which is pretty cool. That's going to be Control and /. If you're a Mac, it's going to be the command and /. Any question? Okay, so let's see how this heading element. So you start by H1, you can press enter. And also what is cool about Visual Studio Code, it used something called emmet. So instead of writing the less than brackets H1 and then close it, and instead of that, you can just type in H1 right away and press enter or tab, and it will automatically create the H1 element for you. And I can say heading 1 or heading element level 1. Now I want to create another H2 here, which is level 2. I can say heading element level 2. And I want to create H3 all the way to H6. H1 is the browser will interpret it as the biggest in size and the most, it's going to be the bold title. And as you increase the level, it will be less in size and less important to the browser. You can, another shortcut with Visual Studio Code is pressing Shift, Alt, and the arrow down key, and you will make copies of this line. So Shift, Alt, and the down key. So I can make copies of that line. So I can change that to 3. And if you get confused about, or you forget any of the shortcuts, you can click View, forget. Help. You'll have the keyboard shortcut reference, and you can open it. It will give you the old shortcuts that you can use with Visual Studio Code. So if you forget any of the shortcuts that we just told you about, like here I told you about the comment, you will see Control/. Here we go. This is split errors. No, split coder. Here we go. No, this is up and down. You can search. Here we go. Toggle line comment, Control/, copy. The one I told you about, copy line up or down, Shift Alt, down arrow or up arrow. So you can always have access to all these shortcuts. So the third one here is going to be level 3, then level 4, then level 5, level 6. So there are 6 levels. 4, 5, 6. And you might ask your question, why if I added level 10? How is it going to be displayed? Okay, let's see. Because I told you that it's going to be from 1 all the way to 6. Now let's open it with Visual Studio Code. That's how they look like. So this is heading level 1. It's going to be bold with bigger size compared to heading element level 2, heading element level 3, all the way until you reach heading element level 6. It's still bold, but the font size is very small. And notice here that heading 10 or heading 7 or any other number, it will be rendered as a regular paragraph. And if you inspect the code to see how it's going to be rendered, you can access the developer tools by right-click your web page and select and inspect, and it will give you the structure of your page here. Notice that it's 10, but this is not a standard heading. That's why it will render as a regular paragraph. Okay, that's the page that I just write over. And if you hover over any of this H1s that my code, it will be highlighted in my document, which is pretty cool. So again, to open this developer tool is right click and you click inspect. And it will open this page and you can resize it. And we're going to use this dev tools a lot, especially with the CSS. Okay, so that's for the heading. Pretty straightforward. What I recommend, the heading is only for semantic meaning. So think about it, it's a markup language. You shouldn't care about, is it bold, the font size, because all of that you can change it with CSS. That's not the job for the HTML. But it have a semantic meaning. Heading, when I use an H1, I'm telling the browser that this is the most important title in my page. When I use an H2, I'm saying that this is the second important title of my page. So as a best practice, if you have a document, the most important title of your page should be at least one, right? So you should only use one H1 in your page. Then you might have the less important ones. You can have use H2, H3. The browser automatically, it will emphasize that H1 is the most important one by making it bolder and making the font size bigger. But again, with CSS, you can change all of that. So it's not about how it looks, it's about the semantic meaning that you give or you instruct the browser about the structure of your page. Okay. So that's for heading. Next, we have P, which is short for bold. So you can turn any text to bold text, and usually here P and I let's actually go over them. So you have the bold and strong. They are pretty much identical. So I can add P, and you can add it inside a paragraph. So I can add a paragraph, and then I want this text to be bold. Let's say here, when I say price, put a colon, and let's say $345.99. I'm going to add the dollar sign in front of it. So whatever wrapped by the P is going to be the bold text. And if you open it, notice that this is bold text and the price is not bold text. With the bold, you can also use strong. And strong give you the same visual effect. Notice that pretty much the same, both of them are bold. However, the strong have a semantic meaning. Tell the browser that, hey, it will emphasize that the price is strong. And it will, here visually, it will make it bold, but there are some users that they serve the web using some application like screen readers because they have some disabilities and they can't see clearly the web pages. So they're using some application like screen readers. And it's becoming a compliance that your web page have to comply with accessible users, especially if you're building like an enterprise application, and you have to put in consideration users with disabilities. So if you're using strong, with that screen reader application, it will put an emphasis on it that this is that the price, it will say it in a different way or a different voice. But bold here, it just visually show it as bold. And that's something you can do with the CSS, and you shouldn't be doing with HTML. So you should be using strong instead of bold. But again, you have also the italic versus and EM or emphasize. They're pretty much the same. So I can say here with an I tag, italic text. And I can put here paragraph, and I use EM tag. And if you render this, both going to be italicized text. The only difference, the EM short for emphasize, so it will be vocally in the screen reader, going to be screen reader will read it differently than any other text, but here the I tag, it just visually in your browser will style it as italic text, which also it's something that you can do with the CSS. So the EM here and the strong, they have a semantic meaning to the browser. They defined putting an emphasis on this piece of content. Okay. Now the browser, think about it that the browser is a baby and you're trying to describe to him the content of your page. Here, you're not describing to the browser, you're describing to the user because it's going to be visually appear to the user as bold, but the browser don't understand that. Here you're telling the browser that this content it's very strong meaning in your page. And here also, I'm having an emphasize on this content. Now the browser can understand that. So they have semantic meaning. Okay, that's the difference between them. Get back. So B is boldface, I is italic, and this is just cosmetic styling. Center, it's duplicated. You shouldn't be using that because even if I put it in Visual Studio Code, it will mark it as red. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you it's been duplicated. This has been used for older version of HTML. It will center your text in the middle of the screen. It still can be used, but you can do that with CSS. Why would I want to do that with HTML? So let's try center element. So if I can do center, notice that the Visual Studio Code will mark it with red. And here, if you try to hover over it, it's not going to provide any information, but it still can be used, even if it's duplicated. This text is centered. And let's see. Notice that the text will be in the center of the screen because I used the center tag. Okay. Any questions so far about these tags here that we're using? Any of these tags don't make sense to you? What do you have a question about? Any of these tags, you just learn about it from the first time today?
Tag name is center. This is first one for me. And I have a question about this tag. When we minimize or maximize the web page, it's also still go in the center, right? When we
Yeah, it's always going to be in the center here. So
okay,
it's pretty dynamic. Which you have this can do the same effect with CSS, of course. And that's the reason it was deprecated, because you shouldn't care about how the page look from the HTML. You should only care about that you have a paragraph, that you have a title, but how this paragraph look like, it's the job for the CSS. Okay, next, let's talk about lists. We need to find a list. And the very first one, if you see here, we have unordered list. So this is unordered list, which will be looked like bulleted. And also you have an order list that will be numbered list. Okay, so you have two types of lists. You actually have three types. But for now, just let's focus on the most popular two types of lists. Either the UL or unordered list or order list, both of them, that you just define the list. But to add an item to this list, you have to use the LI or the list item element. Okay, so LI, an item in an order or number list. Okay, let's start with unordered list. You define the list with a UL, and you start adding items within this list. It's going to be nested inside it using the list item. Let's say task 1, or let's say an example of unordered list would be if you have an ingredients for a recipe. Didn't go with an order. These are the list of the ingredients. So the order here doesn't matter for me, right? So I can say eggs, milk, and water. something like that. I don't know. So I have 3 items. The order doesn't matter for me, technically. I don't have to put the eggs before the milk. I don't have to put the water. All these are the ingredients that I want. And if I open it, notice that first they will have a little bit space here. That's the default, how your browser will view them. You will have the bullet points and the list items. Okay. Order list, which is OL. On the other hand, you're still using list item, but this is for items that goes in order. For example, you can do a list for stuff that you're gonna do per day, like for example, finish homework, then go or watch a movie, and finally sleep. That means I'll need to finish the homework first. Next, I have to watch a movie. Next, I have to go to sleep, and they're gonna be numbered. And if I open that with the live server, notice instead of the bullet points, since this is going to be an order list, this is an order list that they will have numbers instead of the bullet points. Okay, so these are the ordered list. Okay. Now we're going to have the very first element that's self-closing, or you can call it self-closing or an empty element. Empty element because it don't have any content. It's called BR. That's mean short for break here. That will force a new line. Okay, so if I want to have a new line or a break, notice it don't have a closing tag because it don't have any content, right? You don't add text here and then do a closing for BR. That's wrong. Break line that you want to use a break line right here. That's break here. And I can add multiple breaks and then add a paragraph here after that break. So we have 4 lines here, or 5 lines. If I open it, notice that we have some space here, 5 lines. You always go to a new line by using this element, which break here. It's okay to write it this way. And this is an empty element because it don't have a content. And since it don't have a content, you don't need a closing tag for it. You will notice that one main difference between HTML and XHTML, that XHTML is a more strict version that will need you for empty element like this, or self-closing, sometimes you call them self-closing elements, to add a forward slash at the end of for them to visually indicate that this element don't require a closing tag. So you can write it this way, or we can write it this way. With HTML, it's fine. We can write it either way. But with XHTML, which is more strict version of HTML, you must put the forward slash before the closing of the tag. Okay, but just in case, if you take a look at the codes online, you know that it's pretty much the same thing. It's a self-closing element. You can add the forward slash optional for HTML. Okay. Now it's 8:55. Let's take a quick break. 10-minute break. Any question before we go to break? So we're actually going to go over all of these tags later on in the slides. We stopped here at the break line. We already explained what is a paragraph is. If you want to add an image, you have to use an image tag. With a source attribute, you have to define what image that you want to display. And for the A tag, is that's when you create a link. We're going to go over that also in a little bit. And you have to specify where's this link. When you click on it, where they're going to take you. And it's called an A tag because it's called an anchor tag. But it's mainly the anchor tag, you use it to create links. It's very important to understand that HTML tags is not case sensitive, but there is a convention between developers. You can write it with an uppercase, that's absolutely fine. Then with a lowercase is fine. The only thing, the restriction is that you should have the closing tag. This here is incorrect. It will still display, but you might encounter some errors if you didn't write the syntax correctly. Next, we're going to talk about all the tags that's related with HTML text, like heading, paragraphs, line breaks, comments. We already covered that, touching that. How you can create a comment, horizontal lines, we didn't cover that tag yet. For heading, as I mentioned, there are 6 main heading levels. The H1 is the biggest one. The H6 is the smallest one. That means the least important one is H6. H1 is the most important heading in your page. Headings. HTML headings are titles or subtitles. You might have a subtitle in your page that you want to display in your web page. Headings are defined with an H1 all the way to H6. So there's 6 tags that you can use for headings. H1 defines the most important heading. And by default, the browser will display it as the biggest font size. H6 will define the least important heading. You need to understand that the H tag are very important for SEO. So the search engine it's a script. The search engine is like web crawlers will go try to understand how your web page, and it will read your headings. It will read the H1 that will fully understand, for example, if your page is talking about cars. If you have an H1 talking about Honda Civic, now it understands that the main topic of your page is talking about Honda Civic. So when a user searching about Honda Civic, it will provide your page, even if the title of the page that in the head element, not talking about the car type, but now the search engine script can fully understand what is your page is talking about. The most important information on the page should be written with an H1. A page must have one H1 because if you have multiple of them, that will confuse the search engine scripts. Here's an example. Notice that Clarusway, we write it from H1 all the way to H6. And this is how it's going to be displayed on your browser. We did the similar example was heading 1, level 1, level 2. This is level 10. Paragraph is also can be used to display a text that's not a heading. The HTML paragraph define a paragraph turns text into paragraphs. Notice that when you define a paragraph, it will take the full width of the screen. So let me add a paragraph here. First paragraph, then another second paragraph. And let me add another paragraph that will have some dummy text. You can generate dummy text with Visual Studio Code by using lorem. If you type in lorem, that will by default will add some dummy text. And notice that you will have the scroll bar that you need to scroll to see the rest of the text. I don't like to keep scrolling, especially if the text is pretty long. You can do something, go to the view and you do word wrap and you have the the shortcut, which is the Alt-Z, and it will wrap your text and remove this scroll bar. The lorem here will generate one paragraph, but you can pass some parameters. For example, multiple 10. It will add 10 paragraphs when you use the multiple 10. It will generate 10 multiple paragraphs. You can use lorem 10 without the multiplication, and that will generate 10 words. So if you didn't use the multiplication, that you define how many words you want in your paragraph. When you add the multiplication, how many paragraphs you want. So I will have 2 paragraphs, so multiply by 2. Notice I have 2 paragraphs here. Let's see how this is displayed. There we go. This is the first paragraph. Notice it will take the full width of the screen. It's not going to start the second one after the first one. So the p tag will start from a new line. Okay. Second paragraph will start from a new line. And this is the dummy text. And I want to show you the dummy text that as you expand your screen, the size, it will wrap up. That's how it works, paragraphs. It will wrap up. Now it's 2 lines. If I decrease, they will be having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. So technically, you can't control the width of it or how the paragraph will look, especially if it's a big paragraph. Depend to the screen size. So that's for paragraphs. And also same behavior with the heading. It will start from a new line. This is called a block level elements. A block level elements that will take the whole block. It's not going to allow some other text to go right next to it. Okay, so you can see headings, they will always start from a new line. Paragraph will always start from a new line. Horizontal line. Horizontal line in that case will add this type of lines, horizontal lines. That's what it is. It's short for horizontal ruler. So this is like a ruler. Is standard for horizontal rule and is used to insert a horizontal rule or a semantic break. So this should be, there's a spelling issue here. This is called semantic break in an HTML page to divide or separate document section. So I have software development, I adding this line, then I go to the second paragraph. So let's say you have 3 different articles. You want to separate them visually and semantically as well, that you describe to the browser that there is separation between these 3 items here. So for example, here paragraphs, I can add a horizontal ruler. With the order list, I add a horizontal rule, and you can still add the / at the end, that's fine. And notice you will have this separation. And it's have a semantic meaning so that the browser or search engines can understand that this are individual parts of your page. They are separated. Break line or line breaks, which is BR. Insert single line break in a text. BR tag is an empty tag. Empty tag, that means it don't have a closing tag, which is similar to the HR element. So for example, here, after this text, I can add a break. And if I view that, notice that after this word here, the elite, I force the break to the rest of the text to start from a new line. I can add a 1 right here. Let's say after the question mark, which is the question mark right here, I can add a break like that. And notice that after the question mark, I forced to start from a new line. Using comments in HTML, and comments, it's notes for you or any other developers in your team. So for example, I can send a message here. The rest of the code will finish tomorrow. Or you can add some placeholder here, like the navigation bar. Add the nav bar is going to be here. And right here, I will have logo. So these are placeholders. So you can add comments. And this is the syntax of comments. And as I mentioned, in Visual Studio Code, you can use the control and / to get the syntax for the comments. All comments are not displayed in the browser. That's notes for you and your team. But they can help document your HTML source code. And an HTML should begin with the less than angle bracket, exclamation mark, and 2 dashes, and you close it with 2 dashes and greater than angle bracket, and you put the comment between them. Here's a comment. This part is a comment. Sometimes you use the comments to, let's say this part of my code is not working correctly. So I want to see if the error coming from this UL or from the UL. You can comment one of them and check if you still have the same error. If you have the same error, that means it's coming from the UL, and you can uncomment. So you can use comments for debugging and troubleshooting in your code to shut down piece of code to see if this is the piece of code that's giving you the error or not. Now we're going to talk about lists. We briefly talked about the two main different type of lists, either order list or unordered list. With an order list element, the HTML OL tag define an order list. An order list can be numerical or alphabetical. So you have here numerical, alphabetical, or you can use the Roman numeric system. So you might ask how we can change this. So because currently by default, it will have the numeric system, right? Here, 1, 2, 3. You can pass an attribute with a type, and Visual Studio Code will list all the available values. Type 1 is the default, that means that you want it numerical. Capital A, that you want it alphabetical, was in a capital case. So if I pass this, notice ABC, I can do it lower a. So it's going to be listed or ordered with lowercase ABC and so on. They're in the order. If you want the Roman numeric system, you can put a capital I. And you have 1, 2, 3. This is Roman numbers. Or you can have it in lowercase with lowercase I. And you have it 1, 2, 3. Okay. So the type attribute define the order of your list. And I'll keep it 1 to be numeric. Now we're going to talk about unordered list elements. Unordered list elements start with an UL, U short for unordered, L short for list tag. The list item will be marked with bullets. That's by default, which is a small black circle. That's default. But you can also change that behavior. You can make it square bullets. You can make it circle. Then you need the type attribute for that. So I can go right here for the type, circle. Not sure why the Visual Studio Code is not picking up. Here you get circle. See, I can have square. You will have square. The default is going to be the bullet points. I'm just going to keep it circle. So the type attribute can be applied for an order list or order list in that case. Here's an example of using an order list. Each list item have to be defined with the list item tag. So you define each list item, the opening tag and closing tag of the list item. So here we're making a list of some technologies like full stack, data science, or some topics, AWS Dev Operations or DevOps. So we're adding that to the list, and you will see them by default with bullet points. Next, we're going to talk about ID and classes. What is the difference between ID and classes? What is the difference between block level and inline elements? Also, we're going to talk about images, maps, video and audio elements, and also how to create links. So far, we've just been talking about text elements. It's very important to understand the difference between an ID and a class. The ID name is case sensitive. So it's very important to add an ID as a case sensitive. You cannot have more than one element with the same ID. Let's take an example. I'm going to create a new file here. ID and class.js.html. And instead of every time you have to type in the doc type and HTML, and then you have to add the head, and then the body. Instead of, this is very repetitive because that's the basic skeleton of any HTML code. You can type in, there is a shortcut for that. You can type in exclamation mark and press enter, and you will notice that the Visual Studio Code automatically will provide you with a boilerplate of a basic HTML document. Okay, so it's very simple. If you want a good jump start or a boilerplate for your document, you just press exclamation mark and enter, and it will give you a boilerplate for an HTML5 document. We're ready to talk about doc type, HTML, the head, the body. You will see here the title, where you can change the title, ID versus classes. You have two meta tags here. Meta tags is information that you send to the browser. Technically, you're saying that I want to use the character set or the characters that I'm going to use to be displayed in my text to be of that type of encoding, UTF-8, and that's the default encoding. So even if you remove that line, it will still, the browser will be used the default encoding. This line here, it's very important to make your web page responsive. So I highly recommend to keep the viewport meta tag. Technically, it tells you browser, I want to show this page, depend on the device width. So if you have a mobile device that have a less width than a computer, you want to set the width of your document based on the device width, and also the scale to be, the initial scale to be scaled 1:1. Like in the older version of web pages, I don't know if you saw that, like if there is any web page that didn't have that line, and actually let me show you that. HTML meta viewport. And if you go to the W3 School, it will have a good article about this line And if you didn't use it, if you open this web page on your mobile, you actually have to zoom in to see the picture and see the text. But if you have this line, you're going to scale automatically based on your device width, which is pretty cool. This is responsive. It will detect what type of device you have and automatically will resize the text and the image based on the device. But here, this page render in a mobile device without the viewport meta tag. This is with viewport. And of course, this is responsive and it's mobile friendly. This is not a mobile friendly. So it's a very important line if you want your page to render correctly and the user don't have to keep zooming into your page in mobile devices. You don't need to memorize it. It's just because you press the, it's automatically as part of the boilerplate that's provided by Visual Studio Code. You just press exclamation mark and you will have the viewport, the character set, meta tags. Here, ID versus classes. Okay, what about the IDs and classes? What is the difference between them? I can create a div here. Okay. And within this div, let's add this div is wrapping this content here. I can have a title here and say web development. Okay. Have an H2 because this is subheading. And let's say front end development. And let's say I'm going to start by adding a list like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And I'm going to create another div. And this div I'm going to have an H2 and say back end development. I'm going to have a UL h1 Node.js data or SQL database. Oh, adding an H1 here, make a mistake. List item. Express. SQL database. If I try to render this, div is not going to affect your view at all. So if I open it with live server, this is what should I find? Web development, front end. So this is the whole div, but I just was able to semantically divide it or group it together. So use div to group some elements together. Now, let's say I want to add an ID to any of these elements here. Let's say for this div, ID front end. And I can add an ID here back end. So I'm adding identification to that group to be front end. And I added identification to that group to be a backend. Why would I need ID? It's very important, especially with the styling. That's the whole reason for styling, technically. We can add style to this document. And to add a style, you can go to the head, add a style tag, where you can add some CSS, and we're going to talk in depth tomorrow about CSS properties. And CSS have some syntax. For example, I can select all the H2. So you have the selection first, then curly brackets. Then you define what CSS property you want. And I can do color green. If I do it this way, that means all the H2 will have a color green. And let's see if that's going to take an effect or not. Notice now the color is green. What about if I do all the div to have background color, let's say beige. That means both divs will have that background color because that selection, I'm saying all my divs in my document should have a background color. And the syntax here, you have the CSS property, then a colon, and then the value. And you terminate it with a semicolon. We're going to explain that in more depth tomorrow. But now if you take a look, notice that the background is page. But the question, I want only the first one, which is the front end, to be page. Or the second one, let's say, I want that back end to be page. In that case, I can use the ID because I will be more specific that I want that specific part to be page. That's the reason I added an ID or a label. You can think about a label here. So to do that, you can reference an ID by a hashtag. Let's say backend. Notice now the backend only have this color. And I can reference the front end. I can do background color. Let's say aquamarine. Here we go. So I have two different colors, and I was specifically able to select elements from my document by using the ID because I added a label for that element, and this is an attribute. You shouldn't use multiple identifications. So since I used front end, I can't use it here again, front end. That's a no-no. Still, it's going to render the way that should be. Both of them is going to be aquamarine, but it causing a confusion because in that case, it's not an ID anymore. Because keep in mind, ID is a case sensitive. You can't have more than one element with the same ID. Technically, you can, but in that case, it's not going to be an identification for that element. To access the ID in CSS, you should use the hashtag character. Okay, what about classes? Now I understand IDs, that I shouldn't repeat the ID name, should be different every time I create an ID, like backend. What about classes? I can add a div here. And h2, and let's say dev ops. We can have a UL list item version control deployment. And now I want to select both the last two divs. So I can add here, of course, you can add an ID. Let's say dev ops. Okay. And in that case, it's the backend and the dev ops. You can add a comma and you select both of them. And I want both of them to be page. And that should be fine. That, why it's not? I don't know. Oh, because I call it dev ops. Now both of them are page. But logically, I want to add a class or put both of them to the same class or to the same category. So I can say here, class. Let's say I have a backend department, or I can call it operation, or call it team 1. So team 1 should be responsible for the backend, and the .ops, that also belong to team 1. Okay, so both of them belong to the same category, same class. And in that case, I can write it in a much better way where I can reference the class, team 1. And anything that belongs to that class will have the background page. And you refer to a class with a dot or a period. So a class is a period and an ID with a hashtag. So if I open, it's have same effect. So the difference or the main difference between ID and a class, that a class can applied or the shared among multiple elements. However, ID, it's more unique for a specific element. Class can be accessed by using the dot or the period character. Okay, that's the difference between ID and class. What about the block and inline element? That's a block level element, like an H1 or paragraph. It will take the whole width of your page. If you're adding another paragraph, it will start from a new line. That means it's block element. Inline, that it will take as much as space as the content need. Then if you have another element, it will go right next to it. So you see here, that's the next element, that's the next element. So they're gonna go in row. However, block level, they're gonna go in column. Think about it this way, rows and columns. And the default behavior that some elements by default are block level elements, and some elements will be inline elements. You can change that behavior. We're talking about the default behavior using CSS. So with CSS, you can turn an H1 to be inline or block level element. By default, it's a block level element. And you can search to get a complete list of what is a block level element and inline level element. You can do block level elements. You can go to the W3 school and they have a list of all the elements that they are block level, like the UL order list, paragraphs, UL and H1 all the way to H6 tell you that all these elements are considered to be block level elements. You can search for inline level elements and you go to W3 school and it will list all the, no, this is the block level element. If you scroll down, it should be listed down here. Here we go. This is the inline. Okay. So HTML elements are divided into categories according to the place they occupy on the page. It is called a block element, which start from a new line when added to the page and cover the entire line when an element placed next to it. Elements that scroll to the bottom line and take up only as much space needed is called inline elements. The image is inline element, and I can prove that to you when we're gonna take a look at the image tag. The image tag, you use it to display images. The image tag is an empty element. That means don't have any closing tag because it have no content. You just pass the image through the source attribute. It means it doesn't have a closing tag. It have a source attribute or SRC attribute that will tell the browser where it can find the image file, and it's mandatory. You have to add the source attribute. Okay, let's add an image. Get back right here. Image. So in order to add an image, I can add an image tag. And it's a self-closing. There is no closing tag. And you need the source attribute. And there is two types of image. Either you get a URL for an image, that means the image is stored somewhere in the web, and you're just going to get the URL for that image. You can do that. Let's say Google or images. And if you go to images, you can search for user right, common, Creative Commons license. That means free images. Yep. Now let's say I like this image here. Click on the image. This is coming from Wikipedia, so it's completely free. If you click and download, it's not actually download. It's just going to give you where this image located in the web. Notice that this is a URL. So the image is hosted or located on that server, and this is the address for the image. So I can copy that and place it in the source. This is online images. Okay, so this is online images URL. And if you open it with with the live server, it's broken image. Well, because it's file free download. Okay. So let's use this file URL. There you go. This is where is the location of the image. And here you see the image. Okay. The image is so big. I want to reduce it. You can use the width. Let's say I want the width here can be in pixels. So I can say I want it to be 300 pixel. So notice that the width will be 300 pixel. Let's try to add some text after the image. So I'll add some text. Notice I'm not going to use a paragraph because paragraph, it will start my text from a new line. I will just add the text right away. This is some text. Notice that the text will be after the image. It's not going to start from a new line. And the reason for that is that the image is inline. It will take only as much space as needed. But if you add something else, it will start right after the image. Okay. So now we learned about some images. You can also download the image. Let's say this image, I can save it. Save image as, let's say desktop. I downloaded the image. You can drag it in Visual Studio Code. It's called download.jpg. And I can add the image. And instead of hosted in the online, it's hosted here in my web page or hosted in the local file structure. And you can use relative passes. Relative passes, that mean dot means the current directory because it's currently in the current directory /, and you will find that the Visual Studio Code lists all the files that you have in the current directory, and that's the image name. A couple mistakes that I see the students do. They use spaces like this. I don't highly recommend to not use spaces. So it can cause some issues. So just rename it. You can use dashes, but don't add spaces. My pick, I call it my pick. My pick. If you have it, for example, inside a folder, you call it images. You have to put the correct path for the image to load. Because now I'm looking in the current directory for mypick.jpg, And if you open it with the live server, paragraph. Let me remove the alt. Notice that you will have a broken image because it can't find your image. And this is the case if you did a mistake here. Let's say I did a mistake here. Notice now I have two broken images. Okay. So make sure that the URL correctly. And you have something called the alt attribute. The alt attribute, in case the image has been broken or the image is no longer on that server, you can add a text description of the image. So I can say mountain image. Here, I can add an alt text, an alternative. If the image, you were successfully able to load the image, the alt will not going to be there. But if the images get broken, then the alt text will describe the image. And it's very important as well for screen readers, the users with disability, because he's not going to be able to see the image. So the screen readers will read the description that you put in the alt source or the alt attribute. Here I can say my picture. Okay, so if we take a look, you will see here, this is the alt text. It described the image. This is mountain image. Okay, and now if I get the image correctly, URL, you should see that the alt text has been removed. Now, what about this image? This image, I already put it inside a folder. And I saw a lot of students doing this mistakes, that now you're trying to look for the image here, but it's actually inside a folder. You need to go inside this folder by images, then another inside it, you will find the image mypicture.jpg. So you have to put the correct relative path. If you didn't put the correct relative path, your image will not going to be loaded correctly. Here I have my image here. So the alt attribute is used in the image tag, and it's very important because it's describe your image. Scripts or the SEO scripts, they don't see the image. They read the description of the image. It's one of the places search engine look for indexing. Here are a list of some of websites that provide free images. Unsplash, Pixels, Flat Icon is a site where you can use free photos. So if you go to Unsplash, which is very popular free image, you can search for any image like person. I can search for food. I can search for hotels. And you can click on it. You can either download it or you can right click and copy the image address in that case and just use the image URL. So I can copy the image address, and instead of this image, I'll add the image address, and I should see the hotel image right here. Pretty cool. But also you can download it and you have different sizes. Either you download it small, medium, or large, or the original size. And this is in pixels, the width and height. The alt attribute. The alt attribute is used to provide an alternative text for an image in case the image failed to load on the web page or it's not supported by the browser. So if you have a broken image, the text will start to be displayed. If the image loaded correctly, the image is not going to be, the alt text will not going to be displayed. Width and height attribute. These are attributes that you can add to images because some of the images can be really big and you want to limit their width and height. So you can use the width and height attribute. It's used to resize the image. I don't like to use both of them. If you're going to, technically, eventually when you learn about CSS, you're going to do that with the CSS. But if you're going to use an attribute, let's say you want to keep the aspect ratio. So automatically when you reduce the width, automatically the height will get adjusted automatically. But if you try to resize the width and the height, that means you're going to stretch the image and it sometimes is going to look weird. So if I set the height, let's say for 600, that means I'm messing with the aspect ratio. See, it's stretched. So usually you adjust one of them and the width or the height will adapt based on that attribute. The border attribute. The border attribute, by default, an image have no border. To add a border around an image, we can use the border attribute. I think can be used with any element. We can try that. But what you add to the border attribute here is the thickness of the border. Let's say here I want a 2 pixel thick. Let's try to add, actually, let me put it side by side. Let's add here. You can add the border before the source. Let's add the thickness too. Let's add it 5 so we can see it. Now we have the thick border. Let's add 10. Now I have a thicker border to my image. I think you can add it to anything. Let's try to add it to border. 2. Nope. Still didn't allow it for the text. Okay, so we only can add it to the image here. So border and then the thickness in pixels. That's the attribute that you can use here. Next, let's talk about links. How you can add a link to your web page. We're going to talk about the anchor tag, the href, and the target attribute, and how you can make an image as a link. To define a link, it's a must to use the href. The link will not going to be a link with the href, which is short for hyperreference. So an A tag can be used to link to a different section in your page or a different page. To link it to the different section, you have to use the ID of that section. So I'll probably later on here, I have an ID, which is, this is the name of the ID. When the user click here, goes right here. Let's implement that. So I can add a link, go down. Let's say, let's do it the opposite. I will add a link here. And I will say go up. And the text here is what's going to be visible to the user. And I'm going to put here start. So I'm referring an ID that's called start. And I can come to the beginning of my body here, edit ID start. So when the user click on this link, it will scroll him back to the beginning of my page. Let's try it. We save. So you click and go up. I'm referencing the beginning of the body of this page. So I click on it, it should take me to the beginning of the page. I can scroll down, click, go up, take me right here. So I can reference some ID. I put a label here or an ID for the body, the beginning of my document, visible part. And when the user click on this link, the visible part is go up, and notice by default it will be blue. And when you hover over it, it will have this pointer, and it should send you all the way up. You can be used to link from one page to a different page. So for example, you can link to, currently you're in the index.html, you can go to page1.html. And let's actually go here. And we have the backend here. Let me add a break line. Because the anchor is an inline, so I can add a break line to start from a new line. ID versus classes. And I'm going to link here this file, and I'm going to go to the front end. And let's see. Close that. So ID versus classes. Notice I'm in the index.html. When I click on it, it will open the second document. So I'll jump from one document to a second, and it will go to the front end section right here that have the ID of front end. You can use a URL. So technically you're referencing another page that exists in the web. You click on it, it will take you to that page. I can add a link right here. I can say Google. Or I can add HTTPS. This is the URL for Google, google.com. So when the user clicks on the link, it will take him to this URL. Let's save. Let's give it a try. Go backward here. Click in Google. Click on it. Will take you to the Google page. You can always click backward to get to your page. So these are 3 different types of links. And the href is very important attribute. If you don't have the href, it will just look like a paragraph. It's not going to have this hover effect. So if I remove the href, notice that it looks like a paragraph. When I hover over it, I don't see the pointer. So it's very important to add the href. The target attribute. Notice that when you click in any of these links, it will be open in the same page. So when I click here in Google, it will open in the same page. And if I want to get back to my page, I have to click backward. Also, if I click on the second document here, it will get reopened here. And this is the default behavior. But sometimes you don't want the user to move away from your page. I want to open it in the second tab. And in that case, you can use the target attribute. So the target attribute is used to specify how the link should be opened. In order to open the link in a new page or a new tab in your browser, you can use the target attribute and pass underscore blank that you want a new blank tab. Okay, let's say here, I want to pass the target, and automatically Visual Studio Code will list all the type of the target values, blank. And if you click in Google, notice it's going to open a second tab for you. Here we go. And the users still have access to the main page that you have here. For the colors, by default, any link will be blue as long as you didn't visit that link. But once you click in it and you visited this link, it will turn to be purple. When it's active, active means that I'm pressing on it. So if I press here and I keep pressing, it will always be red. Okay. This is active. Now it's purple because I already visited these 3 links and it gets registered in the browser history. But if you never visited this link, it should be blue. How you can create an image as a link? Well, it's very simple. We can use an image as a link in HTML. For this, it is enough to put an image tag between the opening and closing of the anchor tag. So technically, the content of the link will be an image. Let's get Clarusway, for example, as way logo. Go to images, and we can use this one. Look at it. Can right click, save image as desktop. And I'm going to drop the image here. Let me call it logo. Okay, so I have a logo image. Image as link. And now I need to add my link, but instead of adding text here, I'm adding an image. And the source is going to be the logo. And I can say Clarusway logo. And the href is going to be the Clarusway URL, which I can copy the URL, paste it here. So it's a link where the content is simply as an image. So if I open it with the live server, you go right here, and it's a little bit big. Can limit the size using widths. Let's say make it 400 pixels. There you go. And you click on it, it should take you to Clarusway webpage. So now this is a link in a form of an image. And as a matter of fact, let's add a break line right here. And also let's add target underscore blank. And here you have the code for it. So that's it for today, class. Technically, we tried as much as we can going over the most popular HTML tags. Now it's time for you. We're going to play a quick game that we're going to have some questions for you for Kahoot. Let me see if I have the correct one. Yep. Start. So we can log into Kahoot. Classic start. So you can go, this is the pin code. Copy it, or you can scan. Please try to join it. I passed the link on the chat, so you can click in the link right away. Let me also add it to the Slack channel. Okay. You have 6 participants. Let's start. Let's see who's going to become the first. Good. All of you guys get it correctly. We have Jan. I believe she's the fastest, selected the answer, the correct answer faster. You'll have some options here. Some of them are tricky, so try to read the question correctly. Okay, so we got 4 get it correctly. 2 is not the answer, or the red one. Hypertext makeup language. It's markup language. Jan's still on top. This is an easy one. It's BR, not break, and not LP. Now Tori in the second place. Good job, Tori. You just explained that like minutes ago. Perfect. All of you guys get it correctly. Okay, let's move on next. Which tag is used to indicate the biggest heading? Perfect. All of you guys get it correctly. Which tag is used to create a hyperlink? Try to read it correctly. Look at the attributes and the text content. That's correct. You have to use the href attribute. The source is used with images. Here you're passing the URL as a content or as text. What does PR tag do? Insert a space between text, create a link to a website, insert a single line break, insert multiple line breaks. Perfect. It don't insert spaces, it's break the lines. True or false? Break line tag need to have an end tag. True or false? That's correct. It's a self-closing tag. What is P aligned right is used for? We didn't cover align, but can give you an idea. Correct. Move the paragraph to the right. It's an attribute. Where are the HTML and HTML tag used for? This is an easy one. You have the opening tag and closing tag. Perfect. This here is the closing tag at the beginning. No, it should be at the end. Okay. What is the head tag used for? That's correct. To use to create a large text? No, this is the head tag, not the heading element. The other one is like H1, H2, but this is the head tag. True or false? Is the title a required tag? It's not required. It's good for the SEO, but so technically, if you put false, that's fine because technically you can omit it and still will display your page. It's not going to show any errors. Okay, so that question shouldn't count actually. All the content of the web page, the visible part of your web page. The body is the correct. It's adding red background or web page. We didn't cover that today. I can give you, you can guess that one. It should be, I think it's BG, 100%. It's either BG or BG color. BG color. Okay. I tried to do, yeah, that's BG color. So I even tried to do it, but later on, don't worry about that question because we're going to do it with CSS. The paragraph is start. It's used to start a paragraph page, hyperlink. It's an easy one. Good. I'll get it correctly. How do you close an HTML tag? Good. You have the / for the close tag. Which tag is used to indicate the end tag? Very simple question. The / of course. Which tag is used to make numbered list? Numbered list. Exactly. Order list. Order list will show them in numeric list. Remind, it's missing the I see why a lot of students didn't pick that, but this is the correct one. It's missing the greater than one here. You can't use the href image here. It's called img, not image. Okay. Oh, we didn't cover cell and padding. I'm sorry for that. We can skip that one. That means nobody correctly. Next, which is, well, explain the purpose of the topic of a site. What is always a welcome page? That's an easy concept. Is it page 3, the end page, the content, or the home page? Should be the home page, of course. I think we covered that one. Is it? Oh, it's here. Like, what is HTML actually used for? Is it a common language, hyper language, regional language, or a markup language? It's a markup language, of course. You mark the element's location in your page. Which of the following tags is used to mark the beginning of the paragraph? This simple one. Good. All of you get it correctly. Correct HTML tag for the largest heading. Which one is the largest heading? Perfect. H1. That's correct. The last questions. We didn't cover that, but I can tell you I think it's Tim Berners-Lee. Tim Berners-Lee. So yeah. Next. Let's see who's the third. Believe you're the third. Congratulations. Jan, second. And first we have Tori. Congratulations. Good job, guys. And now I'm going to open the floor if anybody have a question about anything that we covered so far. Okay. If you have any question, you can always post it in the Slack channel for the mini course, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you. Tomorrow at the same time, we're going to probably start the CSS and go over the CSS and how to style or web pages. Probably we're going to cover it in 2 days, the CSS, and in the fourth day, we're gonna work on the final project that we put everything that we're gonna learn in the HTML and CSS in a given project, which is gonna be like a basic portfolio project that you might use for yourself. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have a good night.